Next from Springfield, U.S. Representative Adam Kinzinger provides a brief address about the similarities between Illinois' budget problems and those of Washington, D.C., as well as the country's fundamentals that continue to make America strong. This runs about 10 minutes.
Hey, thank you very much. It's good to be here with everybody. I'm not going to keep you overly long. I want to say, I'm in Springfield today, and I'm kind of walking around, and I was feeling pretty bad about myself and, what's going on in D.C. and the difficulties we're having and some of the division and some of the battles and the big issues. And then I realized just now, everything is awesome in Washington, D.C. compared to what's going on here. Woo! Let me, I'm kind of joking, but kind of not. Let me just say, I respect both the prior speakers. Really enjoyed hearing from Jim, and I think, look, it's I'm in an alternate capital than the one I usually work in, but I felt like at the very beginning I stepped into an alternate reality where somehow the Republicans had been in charge of Illinois for the last 12 years, and it's all the Republicans' fault for a $6 billion budget gap. I'm actually pretty excited. I'm excited about what's going on the national level, and I'm really excited about what's going on in Illinois. And we're going to have some very difficult things we have to go through, and there's going to be a lot of battles and division. But I think that we've seen the worst days already pass in Illinois. And you think about it, Illinois is in the middle of the greatest country in the world, right? Obviously, the United States of America is by far and away the greatest country in the world. And in the middle of that greatest country in the world, you have the state of Illinois, which for much of history has topped the list as the greatest state in the union and the greatest country in the world. You think about the rivers we have, the interstates we have, the airports we have, the people that we have, the youth we graduate, the agriculture, the intense energy. I have 4 nuclear power plants in just my congressional district, and oil refineries. I have an oil refinery as well. We have all the fundamentals in place to absolutely blow away every other state in the union. And I am really proud of what the future of this state holds, I have to tell you that. And in seeing some of the things that are being discussed and in some of the ideas that the governor is bringing to the table, I'm stoked. I really am. Now, I want to tell you, on the federal level, we've got some challenges. I'm not going to stand in front of you and just give you all the bad news. We all know, what we're dealing with budget deficits, although I do want to tell you that when I came into Congress in 2011, we had a federal budget deficit, just deficit, of $1.5 trillion. And because of me, no, I'm just kidding. But since then, this year, the federal budget deficit is still too big, but it's at $480 billion. So it's 1/3 of what it was just 4 years ago. Think about that. It's been the largest decline in federal deficit in American history, and I think that's something we ought to be proud of. Now, we have a long way to go, and that's going to be through continued economic growth. And that's why I personally think as we debate with the issue of the Export-Import Bank, it's important for us in Washington, D.C. to understand the role that the Export-Import Bank plays in the world. And to understand that, China and Canada and all these other places have the ability to finance sales to other people with their Ex-Im banks, and that it's important that we not unilaterally disarm ourselves and that we authorize the Ex-Im bank and allow suppliers and manufacturers to be able to continue to sell their goods, not just directly overseas, but to companies like Boeing, who manufacture goods using parts, frankly, out of my district in northern Illinois a lot. So I think that's going to be a very important issue. One of the other big issues we're going to have to tackle, and I don't frankly think that we're going to have any great success in the next couple months, but I think in the next year we will, and that's the issue of long-term transportation funding in this country. So for those of you that are unaware, and I think most of you are probably aware, we actually set the federal gas tax in the mid-90s. We set it at 18 cents. When we set it, we did not put an inflationary device in place, which you think would have been done, being as how, look, as time you have inflation and increase in personnel costs, increase in the cost of goods and materials that are used to make roads, for instance. That was not done. Well, now, in the 1990s, a good gas mileage car got 25 miles a gallon. Today, I drive a Ford Fusion Hybrid, which gets 40 miles a gallon. And so we're using less energy for the same amount of miles and the same wear and tear on the roads. And what we've seen as a result is a drastic underfunding of our Highway Trust Fund. Now, we have a few options we can do with that. We can either raise the gas tax, we can toll every road, not just the tollways, we can toll every road, We can put a little tracking device on your car that tracks how far you drive, and then you pay a tax at the end of the year based on that. I'm going to tell you, I don't think the American people would be cool with the federal government putting a tracking device on their car. Or we can accept the fact that we are no longer going to have we're no longer going to have leading edge infrastructure in this country, and we just have to accept crumbling infrastructure. I don't think any of us want to do that. The reality is, when we do fixes to the highway fund now, we're actually really doing some smoke and mirrors fixes and then spending into deficit, which means we're paying an increase in tax anyway. We're just giving it to our kids and grandkids. That's what happens every day when we spend into deficit. So over the next year, we have to have a real grown-up discussion in this country about how we're going to fund the kind of roads and bridges and waterways and everything that we need. And that's going to be something where it takes adult conversations in Washington, D.C. And whenever you hear a politician talk, we usually like to make you feel bad because I guess somehow it relatively makes us look better. I don't know. But it's always bad news. It's always negativity. But I really do believe that the fundamentals of making America continuing to be a strong country are there, and I'm going to tell you why. So 2011, and I've had 100 stories like this, but this is my favorite one. It's about 6 months into my first term, and I'm in Morris, Illinois, and I'm giving a Purple Heart to a guy that had been wounded in Iraq his second time. So he actually got wounded in Iraq, was sent to Germany, healed there, and basically went back to Iraq, was injured again, and this was the injury that sent him home. Now, he has 2 daughters and a wife. He's my age. And since he had been home, I had been told that he had something like 6 or 7 heart attacks since he'd been home. Think about that. So now you've got a guy that's been injured twice, has this disability, has PTSD, has a wife who's looking for him to provide for the family, and 2 daughters that barely know what this life is about anyway because they're so young and they know that they look up to Dad. And he's had all these issues. And I pull him aside prior to this Purple Heart ceremony, and I said, hey, let me ask you a question. What goes through your mind? Because I said, I struggle with, and this is still true to this day, and it's something you can't understand unless you've served in a combat zone or in the military. I said, but every day I miss Iraq, and I miss the people that I was with. It's really a hole in my heart, and even in 2015, it's still the case. And he just kind of smiled, and he goes, it's actually funny you say that, Congressman. He said, I called my contact in the Army, and I told them that they could have all of my medical disability. I get my paycheck the rest of my life, as he well should. He said, they can have all of it. They can have all my disability. They can have all my VA benefits. I'll sign that I never have access to a VA again. They can have all my medals, anything they want, if they would just let me go back to Iraq for 1 more year. If they would just let me go back for 1 more year. I get choked up every time I tell that story, and that's many times I've told it. He said that for 2 reasons. Number one, because the guy that has given so much to his country misses his friends. He misses his brothers and sisters there. And the second reason is because despite 2 Purple Hearts, despite injuries, despite heart attacks and a wife and daughter relying on him, he still feels like he hasn't given to his country. So you're not going to find that in the Chinese military. You're not going to find that in the Russian military. So while we sit around nervous that the Chinese are going to overtake us and America is going to go from great to good, I want you to just remember that story and remember that the people of the United States of America, we may look different, we may have different accents than we had 200 years ago, there may be much more history behind us, but the fundamentals of the people of the United States of America is no different than it was the day this country was founded. So thank you for the opportunity to come here and address you, and God bless all of you. Thank you.
You're watching the Illinois Channel, an independent nonprofit corporation formed to provide gavel-to-gavel coverage of Illinois state government and other public affairs events taking place across Illinois.